I really think this Genesis G70 has what it takes to take on that BMW.
Yeah, but...
Hey guys, I found you!
Sebastian, what are you doing?
Who's running the website?
Oh, I got something to cover for me. Don't you guys need any help?
We're shooting a video here, man.
Can I help at all?
I mean, I could go for a coffee.
Go get me some snacks.
I'm on it, boss!
Anyway, I think this Genesis G70 is really good, and that BMW is gonna... I swear to God!
Okay, all right. BMW 340i, Genesis G70 Sport. Let's just get this over with. Sebastian.
Dude didn't even wear his AutoGuide shirt.
I'm gonna talk to his mother about this.
The Genesis G70 has been shaking things up in luxury car land, offering a car experience that's very similar to BMW, but at a much more accessible price. And the best part is that they don't compromise on anything. And that is very important. The interior of this G70 really embodies what luxury cars are all about these days, which is all in the details. For example, I love these quilted leather seats with the red contrast stitching. This aluminum trim bit is really nice, and everything just feels solidly put together. And all in all, my initial impressions are very positive.
Oh, wow.
Isn't it nice in here?
Yeah, look at all of these details. I love the quilted leather seats. And these little accents on all of the knobs. That's really nice.
They did a fantastic job designing this entire interior.
Look, I'm going to be honest. When I first heard about this car, I thought it was just going to be a reskinned Kia Stinger, and it's very clearly not that.
It's completely different.
The only thing I have an issue with is the rear seats are kind of small.
It's a little bit tight back there, so it definitely has less room than the BMW and the Stinger. But what it does do really well is all the features. This is a fully spec'd out car. It's got an amazing infotainment system with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, heated seats, ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, all the tech features like adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, and a dope head-up display that tells you if there's someone in your blind spot.
Yeah, that's a color head-up display. And one of the other features that I actually like are the recorded Sirius XM radio stations. That's pretty cool. Is this car as much fun to drive as it is to sit in?
Hell yeah, it is. Sammy.
Jody.
This car's fast.
It's really nice. Have I ever told you how much I love sports sedans? It's like my favorite class of car in the marketplace.
I love driving this car.
And this is pretty nuts.
It makes me really excited, and that is a feeling that I don't necessarily get in the BMW.
I can totally understand why. I mean, there's more to this car than you really think, because it's got that really nice sounding V6, and it's got a ton of power as well. That has 365 horsepower, and I think 376 pound-feet of torque. It just feels so quick all the time.
And not only that, it's just that it has the whole package. Like, the suspension feels good, the steering feels good, it looks cool, it's got luxury, it's got sport. It's just a really good package.
And that's not something I was expecting at all when it comes to Genesis' first entry-level sports sedan, right? Like,
right.
They really took their time with this, and it feels really special on the road.
Yeah, and so a problem I had with other Genesis cars before, like the G80 and the G90, is that I would get in them, drive them, and think, wow, these are great cars. But they never gave me anything to like freak out about.
Right.
And so with this G70, it feels special.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it's everything that it should be.
Right, it feels like it's not missing anything. In fact, it feels really like it matches the benchmark of every other sports sedan out there. Now, I think that the driving dynamics are some of the most important parts of a sports sedan. It needs to feel natural and sporty and fun to drive, and this car does that every single time.
I totally agree with you, and whereas the BMW kind of set the standard for sports sedans, I feel like this Genesis can pretty much match what it's bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you put your foot down, it just takes off.
And it sounds pretty good too.
I mean, a turbocharged V6 is hard to make sound really bad, but this thing really does it.
And I mean, it's without all of the expensive like M performance stuff that our BMW has, and so this ends up being a lot cheaper.
Oh yeah, like this has got to be about $50,000 or so, and I think that's a pretty good deal. I have to say, I really like the transmission in this car. I mean, it is always in the right gear.
And it's super snappy.
And, you know, there's a couple of drive modes in this car as well, which you toggle over here. Let's put it in that sport mode, and then everything goes all funky and red.
And it gets even crazier.
It gets really aggressive like that, and that's what you want in something like this. But at the same time, you can put it into a comfort mode and not feel like you're in an obnoxious vehicle, which I think that's what the BMW does, especially the one that we have, which has all of these M Sport goodies. It starts popping and crackling all the time, and this car doesn't do that.
Yeah, and so I feel like this car does the luxury thing a little bit better than the BMW does. Simply because its drive modes are they make things really different instead of just a little bit different.
And I don't know if you've seen, there's this really interesting smart drive mode, which like takes the way that you're driving at the current moment and then gives it a special drive mode immediately. So instead of having to pick and choose how you're feeling, you know, now I want to drive sport, and then you're stuck with that sport mode for the rest of your drive.
Right.
This one picks and chooses it for you based on what you're doing. So on the highway, it'll be nice and comfortable, but as soon as you start getting a couple of curves, it'll put in that sport mode, which is kind of neat.
That's really cool because it takes just a little bit out of thinking, oh, what mode should I be in? But so we're in sport mode now, and there is a little bit of looseness to the steering, which is a little bit disappointing. I really wish it was a little bit tighter and a little bit more responsive. But I will say that at parking lot speeds and stuff like that, it gets nice and light, so it's easy, which is not something we found with the BMW.
Absolutely. And let's talk about how this car makes you, makes you feel cool, because you're in something that nobody's seen before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so when I was driving this, I had a moment and I was thinking about it, and I just said, oh my God, I feel cool driving this car. I feel cool walking up to it in the morning and starting it up. And that's not something that I felt in the BMW. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that there aren't too many Genesis G70s out there.
Right.
And there are a million BMW 3 Series.
Absolutely.
And so this has that little extra element of being rare and unique that the BMW just cannot do anymore, because it's a victim of its own success. It just got so popular that they're everywhere now.
Right.
But people will look at this when it drives by, they'll turn their heads, they'll like point and take photos, and like that does not happen with the 3 Series.
Absolutely. And I have to say, the design is really good, the performance is excellent. I really think they've delivered the perfect package in a sports sedan.
I agree with you. This is a fantastic car. And I did want to mention that even though it's Hyundai's luxury brand, nothing about this says Hyundai to me.
Right.
There's no similarities from the interior of this Genesis to a Hyundai, except for maybe the head-up display, and the infotainment system is alike, but all of the switchgear is different, the materials are different, the layout is different.
And that engine is found in no other Hyundai. I mean, it's in the Kia Stinger, but you won't find it in any other Hyundai out there. Okay, Jody, it's clear that we're both pretty impressed with the G70 from Genesis.
Very much so.
But the 3 Series has always been the benchmark in this class. So let's jump in that and see how it holds up. Okay, that Genesis is pretty impressive, but come on. When it comes to sports sedans, we have to bring up the BMW 3 Series. This is the leader in the segment, and this thing is pretty fun to drive too. But I'll admit that the interior of this car hasn't aged very well at all. This interior looks so familiar. It's pretty much the same that it's always been for the last 5 or 6 years. And I really don't like some of the hard materials found throughout the cabin.
Okay, so I really like the color of this leather. That's nice, it's different.
What, the red? I mean, it's kind of juvenile.
I like it. I don't care what you think, but there are some problems elsewhere in this cabin. Like, I'm not a huge fan of this layout. It looks a little bit dated.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the materials as well. I mean, it makes the car feel a little cheap, which it isn't.
That's true. I guess for something this expensive, I expected it to be a little fancier inside, maybe.
Yeah.
And I noticed that this doesn't have a lot of the features that the Genesis does, even though it costs a lot more.
Yeah, I don't have a heated steering wheel. I don't have ventilated seats.
Adaptive Cruise is gone.
No, and I don't even have Android Auto in here. In fact, Apple CarPlay is an added extra with wireless charging, and it doesn't even fit my phone for the wireless charger, which is a huge shame.
That's a big problem, because that means like iPhone 10s and stuff won't fit in there.
I don't think so. But you know what? This car is, it has the M Performance Pack, and it sounds pretty nuts. Just listen to this. Alright, so while the interior hasn't aged very well, I think the rest of this car has aged pretty decently. I mean, this car in its current generation has been around since about 2012, and I mean, not much has changed since then. I mean, the 335 is now the 340, which is what we have here.
Right.
And the car feels really good. I really love this engine. It is so linear and smooth in its application. You just put your foot down and it keeps going. That really surprised me.
This car is so ridiculously fast, and it's amazing because there's no peak. It just keeps going, and it gets to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I'm breaking the law, and I really need to find out how far it will go.
I know, and you know what's even funnier is that this car has a very special performance package that includes that M Sport exhaust, which sounds crazy.
I love that.
And it also has more power. So now the car has over 350 horsepower and over 360 pound-feet of torque, and you really feel how fast this car is all the time.
Yeah, so even though this car is mechanically quite old, I still think it sets the bar really, really high for cars in this segment. And so like, even though there's a new one coming out pretty soon, I feel like mechanically there's not that much they could improve on.
And just listen to this. I mean, I don't know if you would ever want to get this car in any other way than with this Sport
Punch
exhaust.
it!
It sounds nuts, and when you have it in the Sport transmission mode, it also like crackles and pops and burbles. And this is something that BMW's been doing a lot of. I think me and Sebastian talked about it way back in the X3 M40i, which has a similar powertrain.
Yeah.
And this is so different. It adds a little element to a typically sterile vehicle.
Yeah, so I feel like by adding all of the M goodies, it gives this car a bit more personality, because that's like a common complaint we have with a lot of BMWs, that they're very sterile and they have basically nothing gives you the giggles. But like this engine mixed with this M performance exhaust really gives me the giggles.
Absolutely.
I did want to bring up the steering though, because
look, I'm driving this thing. It's pretty heavy. In some cases, and then it's really not in others, which is really unexpected.
And so it's weird because this is the upgraded.
Woo! I just lost my phone.
It's in the crack. That means it's lost forever, Sammy. Say goodbye to your phone forever. But just going back to the steering for a second, this is the upgraded M Sport steering. And so I expected it to be crisp all the way through and super responsive, but even in sport mode, I found it really jiggly on the highway.
There's some play in the steering a little bit.
And then at parking lot speeds, you're fighting with it. So it's like, it's got things messed up. It should be the other way around.
I think you're right. I think on the highway, it should be really stable feeling. And then when you get to the slow speeds, it should be really light and easy to manipulate there. So, I don't know. It's not quite as natural feeling as the Genesis.
Yeah.
And there's certain things about this car that I just think are feeling a little old-fashioned, as I mentioned with the interior.
Right, and I mean, but the powertrain, it's a great powertrain.
It is very
good.
Good.
We can't deny that this is an excellent, excellent powertrain. But is it $10,000 better than the Genesis?
I don't think so. And I mean, this particular vehicle is loaded up to the gills, and that's the way we kind of wanted. We said that that performance package is really what makes this car feel different.
Right.
And you'd have to get all those goodies in order to get all of that. And that ends up adding so much money to the price tag. And I don't know if that's really what you want in a sports sedan. If you want something that's really sporty, you can get a sports car too, right?
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm not feeling that duality that a sports sedan should provide in this car. While the Genesis, I think, has that, that two-sided personality.
Yeah, I do think the Genesis might be a more well-rounded car. Like, it does the luxury thing really well, but it also does the sporty thing really well, where I'm not sure this BMW does the luxury thing really well or the sporty thing really well, so that's weird.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
What are you doing?
Who's running the website?
I can go for a coffee.
Can I help at all?
Go get me some snacks.
I'm on it, boss. So I got to the office this morning and Jody and Sammy were just gone. They just left me. But I've got the Kia Standard GT, which is our AutoGuide car of the year, so I thought I'd go look for them this morning.
So the BMW falls behind today, which is a pretty big surprise considering Genesis is brand new to this scene.
I am really curious though to see how this G70 stacks up against Sebastian Stinger because he so badly wants to be in this video. Should we just let him?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you've got my coffee, right? Right? Sebastian, come back! I just want my coffee!
The Stinger uses the same 365 horsepower V6 and the same 8-speed auto as the Genesis, but wraps it in this mean-looking sportback body. That means that you get a little more space, up to 40 cubic feet with the seats down, and an interior that you'll recognize, even though it's a little less fancy. That means that it weighs just a bit more at 4,000 pounds, but it also costs a whole bunch less at $52,000 for this top-of-the-line model.
If you want to talk about accessible luxury and more space in the backseat, then we've got to talk about the Kia Stinger. It's a size bigger and it costs way less. Plus, just look at this thing. Sure, you do lose a little bit of luxury in this thing, but it's all in the name of sportiness. And it's not what you'd call Spartan in here. I mean, you still get the Alcantara roof and nice, comfortable seats, and it looks pretty good.
Sebastian,
Jody.
thank you for weaseling your way into this comparison video.
That's what I like to do.
I'm actually very grateful you're here because I have had a lot of time in the Stinger and it's actually a really good car, so tell me the deal with the interior.
As you can see, it's pretty good. Like, it's sporty, but it's meant to do that. So I think they pull it off really well.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be as luxurious as the Genesis, and I actually love all the tech in here. There's Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, really good wireless charging, ventilated seats, heated seats, steering wheel is heated, it has all the tech features, blind spot monitoring.
A nice 360-degree cam.
Yes, and adaptive cruise control, so it has all the tech that we expect from a car like this, but how does it drive?
Let's find out.
Sebastian,
Yes, Jody.
now that you've joined in on our shoot,
Yes.
why does this Kia Stinger deserve to be here?
Because this is the car of the year. This, we all agree, is a great driver's car. We had it on the Angeles Crest last year. It was a stunner.
Yep.
And I still think it holds up. It's got the same V6 with 365 horsepower as the Genesis. It's got a little more space inside. And I think it looks really cool. It looks really good.
I think this car looks fantastic, and when I took it on this big long road trip through the desert,
Yeah.
everywhere we stopped, somebody wanted to talk to me about it.
Right?
Try doing that in the BMW.
I was in the parking garage downstairs at our office yesterday, and it was across the row from the BMW, and I saw two people looking at this and nobody looking at the BMW because this thing is such a handsome car.
It is really, really good looking, and it looks dramatic.
Yeah.
It drives good. It kind of like brings the goods to match what it looks like.
Well, absolutely. Except for on the sound front, because you basically can't hear it. There's nothing wrong with the way the V6 sounds, it's just quiet. And you get this big dramatic outside, you get these lights at the back that are so aggressive, and then you get inside and it's kind of like, "Mrrr," and it's just not that exciting, you know?
Right. I completely agree with you that it should have been a little bit noisier, or at least it should have come with like an open exhaust mode or something like that. That would make it a bit more aggressive.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, because that would have made it like, yeah, that would have made the sound match the exterior, and when you're in it, you can't have any fun in it. Like, it's not, you know, when you go into a tunnel and you're like, you put the windows down and you're all excited.
Yeah,
it's
you
gonna
like
be- it's gonna sound
downshift
so
a
good.
little.
Yeah, exactly. You pull 2 gears, and in this thing, you just hear the same sort of quiet. Again, not bad, but just not exciting sound. That you
Yeah,
already
and I was surprised that the Genesis actually sounded better
Right.
because that's supposed to be the more luxurious of the two, not necessarily the sportier of the two.
No, this is definitely playing at being sportier.
Yeah, so it was an interesting choice. What do you feel about the driving dynamics, steering, suspension, everything?
So this is, again, it's fairly similar to the Genesis, but I would say that this has a bit less of a dead spot right at the top of the steering wheel.
Okay, so it's just a little bit more responsive?
It's a little more direct, and it feels a little quicker, and that just makes it feel better. And especially in sport mode, once you get past that, it feels really good. And like in the curves, it feels really nice, and it's got a nice heavy feeling, but things happen quickly, so you don't feel like
Gotcha.
you're fighting against understeer or anything like that.
Okay, and you had mentioned the brakes before. Talk to me about that.
Right, the brakes in this thing are completely numb. They work, but you just can't feel at all what's happening. Like when you're trying to pull up to a stop, it's really hard to gauge what's going on because there's a lot of pedal travel and you don't get much feedback through it. Like you just can't feel it at all.
And that's a big shame because I mean they're Brembos, and so they stopped the car perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But you're just saying you wish you felt it a little bit more through the pedal.
Well, it's hard to gauge what's going on.
Right.
Like,
But yeah, do you feel cool driving this car?
I feel so cool driving this car. I feel very cool driving this car around. This car to me feels like what I hope fatherhood will feel like. You know, like leather jackets and jeans and just dropping your kids off at school and being like, yeah, I'm a cool dad. Like all the fun bits. Like you get Your kids are going to play catch with you. You're going to go push them on a swing, and none of the horrible responsibility.
I feel like you're having baby fever. Like, do you really want a baby right
Look,
now?
my time is almost up.
You keep coming back to that.
I only have so many eggs.
I mean, like, when I drive this car, I feel cool.
Yeah.
And when I drive the Genesis, I feel cool.
Mm-hmm.
I do not feel cool in the BMW.
No.
And this definitely gets a lot more looks. And I will say, because of the sport back, we could fit a bike in the back with the seats down.
Yeah.
And we tried it with the Genesis. It was not happening.
It was not happening.
Yeah, so in terms of practicality, I think this takes it a little bit.
Right, and that's kind of this thing's big party piece, is that it's like 5 Series sized for 3 Series money.
That's a good point.
So, and you know, and there's a lot, and it delivers on that. It's got a lot of space. You can fit all sorts of people inside of it, and it's got power and oodles of fun driving dynamics. But is it as good as the Genesis for you?
Well, now that you've crashed our comparison, let's figure out what the answer is.
Okay.
Sebastian, I'm actually so happy that you came to crash our car comparison, because the Kia Stinger is just such a good car. But I still think the Genesis G70 is that much better.
I got to agree with you. I think it's really impressive that it beat out both the BMW and our 2018 Car of the Year.
Good job, Genesis!